Okay.
Well, hello, Helena.
Hello, Miss
Great
Donna.
to see you again.
Good
Um,
to see you.
and I thank you for joining us this morning to talk about your experiences both as an incarcerated woman and as a returning citizen. Um, Maybe you can start by telling us a bit about what your childhood was like and where you grew up.
Well, my childhood was at a very young age. I lived with my grandmother. We lived with my grandmother. We lived with her until I was about 11 or 12. And when we lived with my grandmother, we didn't have very much. We was like poor. And that's because my grandmother had us to take care of. So then when my mother came and got us when we was like 12, because my mama, she had me when she was 15. So she was only a kid herself. So then she came and got us when I was like 12, and we moved into the projects, which was turned out to be a liquor house because my mom started selling liquor and dinners and having people play skin, which is a card game that people used to play for money. So it was a lot of going on in our house. You know, it was a lot of noise, activity, drinking, drugging. So I started drinking when I was like 12 years old because we used to have to go downstairs in the morning before we go to school and clean up the mess that the people had left the night before. So my brother and I, we would drink out the cans. The people left beer in the can. We would drink out the cups. And people left beer or liquor in the cups. So I often went to school intoxicated.
And where was that? What part of Virginia was it?
Alexandra.
Yeah.
Yep, I'm from Alexandra.
Okay. And then what was your first? Well, first of all, let me ask you: did you have other siblings besides your brother?
Yes, I have three brothers.
And are you the oldest, or where
I'm
did
the
you?
oldest.
Or the oldest? Okay.
Yes. So I had a lot of responsibility. Like sometimes my mom, she would be gone for a couple of days or something like that. I used to have to take care of my brothers.
Hmm. And what was your first interaction with law enforcement in the court system?
And I was like, well, my first interaction with the law was when I was like young, when I was like 12 or 13. I started setting the school bathrooms on fire. I don't know why I did that, but I used to do that. So I had got caught one time. So I had got arrested. I went to the detention home. And so from the detention home, I just went back to the detention home again for fighting. And so then when I was 17, I had rented a car and I was coming from Virginia Beach. I was going to pick up some drugs for a family member, and the police pulled me over, and I had drugs in the car, and I got sent away. And that was my first time being incarcerated. I went to Goochland.
And you were a juvenile then, right?
Yeah, but they kept me in Goochland in the maximum security building until I turned 18. Then they put me on population. But now they have women up there that's like 15 or 16 that's in population.
Wow. I didn't realize that.
Yes,
Juveniles there. Why do you think you were placed in maximum security there? Was that for your protection or what?
because of my age.
So all the juveniles were in maximum
Back then, this was like in 1975.
security. And then, so when did you go to Fluvanna? Did you go to Fluvanna right after Richland?
1975. 1975. 1975. 1975. 1975. 1975. 1975. 1975. 1975. 1975. 1975. 1975. 1975. 1975. 1975. 1975. 1975. 1975. 1975. 1975. 1975. 1975. 1975. 1975. 1975. 1975. 1975. 1975. 1975. 1975. 1975. 1975. 1975. 1975. 1975. 1975. 1975. 1975. 1975. 1975. 1975. 1975. 1975. 1975. 1975. 1975. 1975. 1975. 1975. 1975. 1975. 1975. 1975. 1975. 1975. 1975. 1975. 1975. 1975. 1975. 1975. 1975. 1975. 1975. 1975. 1975. 1975. 1975. 1975. 1975. 1975. 1975. 1975. 1975. 1975. 1975. 1975. 1975. 1975. 1975. 1975. 1975. 1975. 1975. 1975. 1975. 1975. 1975. Yeah, but not from Goochland. I was out on the streets when I went to Fluvanna. I went to Fluvanna for robbing two banks.
Oh,
I robbed the banks because of my drug addiction.
to get money.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's interesting that you said that, one of the first ways that you got in trouble was setting cameras in the bathroom. Reminds me of another man that I know well who's been incarcerated for many years, and that was one of the first manifestations of his problems was he set fires. Um, he also said he had trouble understanding why he did that. But it's to be kind of a form of escapism.
Yeah. And see, now I understand why I did it because I read books about, juvenile behaviors and stuff. It was because I was very unhappy. And I didn't like school because I used to stutter real bad. And people used to tease me about stuttering. They used to mark me. So I used to get in fights.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
You had a stutter growing up? Is that what you're saying?
Yes, yes, I used to stutter very bad. And then they put me in this special class, and so like it was for people that were slow in school or people that had problems. So the lady, she dealt with me on my stuttering, and that helped me get over it.
But did you have trouble learning to read, for instance, or was that easy for you?
No, it wasn't easy. It was okay for me. I thought I was doing good. I was going to Charles Houston School and Parker Gray Miller School and GW. And those was like what we call the black schools at the time. Because at the time it wasn't segregation wasn't like in Alexandria. It was like more or less separate but equal in the schools. And so then when they integrated the schools, when they really integrated the schools and we had busing, so then I had to go to TC Williams. And when I went to TC Williams High School, I was like, they gave me these books, and all the books was new. And I had never had a new book before. Because GW, George Washington High School, we didn't have new books. And the pages was missing. It was like always profanity written in the books, or somebody go with somebody and somebody did this to somebody. And when I went to TC Williams, they gave me new books. And I looked at the books and I really couldn't read. I couldn't read like the paragraphs. I could like maybe make out 3 or 4 words in the paragraphs because their books was like college books to me when they're supposed to be like a 9th grade book.
So you weren't prepared for that level of reading at the time?
No, I wasn't. But I was doing okay in GW, but I wasn't doing okay in TC Williams. So I left.
So you dropped out of TC Williams?
Yes.
Yeah.
And it was intimidating.
Okay. So and how did you learn to read?
Well, I learned to read taking my GED in night school and incarcerated because I went to prison 4 times.
4 times. Okay.
4 times.
Okay, so you were at Goochland, and then how long were you out on the street before you were reincarcerated?
About, let's see, I came home in like 1977, and I was locked up again in like 1980 or 81. And then I came home like in 84, And then I was locked up again in like 98 or 96. Then I came home in 96 or 98, and I was locked up again in 2006.
Okay. And the last time, how long were you in prison?
9 years.
9 years. And so, what was it? It was bank robbery one time. What were the other times, the other things that caused you to go back to prison?
It was drug possession, and one time it was shooting into an occupied dwelling.
So, what was your first contact with guns?
With what?
Guns.
Well, my first contact with guns was like when I was about 13. My uncles, they had guns around the house a lot. And they was like drug dealers. So they always had guns and drugs around the house. I started using drugs when I was 15.
Mm-hmm.
Heroin.
Wow. So, you were at Goochland as a juvenile, and then you were out for a while, and you went back to prison. Where were you incarcerated?
The second time, Goochland. Fluvanna wasn't there then.
When did you go to Fluvanna?
The first time I went to Fluvanna was like in the 90s.
And what was your first impression of Fluvanna? How was it a lot different from Goochland or not?
It was a lot different because they had a fence around it, and Goochland didn't have a fence, and it was like more security. And the COs was like very, very hostile towards us.
And that was not true at Goochland as much.
No, that wasn't true at Goochland.
Were the other prisoners different from those at Goochland?
No, they were like about the same because some of them were the same. Some of them I had been locked up with before.
Okay. And what were the educational opportunities like at Fluvanna?
The educational opportunities at Fluvanna is great. I mean, it really is. It's the best I've heard of from other prisons. They have all various vocational. They have from building maintenance. They have optical. They have industrial sewing. They have HVAC. They have electrical. They have printing. They have dog training. They have culinary arts. They have a lot of vocational opportunities. And then Doris Buffett, she came along and she was given 15 scholarships out a year at Fluvanna. 15 women scholarships every year to get their associate degree. And the professors from Piedmont Community College would come to the institution, and they told us that we was doing the exact same work with the exact same books that the people were on the outside. And so I had applied for one of those scholarships, and I was lucky enough to get it. And going to school is what like gave me the awakening that I have today. Going to school, I figured like this. I had an awakening. I was just like thinking about my life and how I didn't want to keep coming back there. And education opened doors for me. It opened up my mind. It gave me other things to think about, like foreign affairs, like the science, things I have never thought of before. Um, So one day I was just like laying in my room. I was reading a book, a sociology book, and I thought to myself, if I don't use drugs, if I can stop using drugs, I won't commit crimes. If I don't commit crimes, I won't come back to prison. I mean, it sounds so plain and simple, but it was like the light just came on in my mind.
Mhm. Well, was there assistance available at Fluvanna in overcoming your drug habit?
Yes, it was. They had matrix class, so I started working for the matrix program. I was a co-facilitator of the matrix program for like 4.5 years, all the way until they closed the matrix program down. And that was because the facilitator he retired, and people had started complaining that they had the word God in the literature, like in NA and AA. People started complaining about that. So he said that he wasn't going to take the word out. So they some atheists they sued the Department of Correction about having God in the word God in the matrix material, because the matrix material had became mandatory. That if you had a drug history or a drug charge, then 6 months before your release, you had to go through the matrix program. So for all mandatory classes, they couldn't have the word God in it. So the facilitator, Mr. Barber, he resigned.
Well, what was that like for you to be a facilitator for that program?
It was great. It really gave me the strength I have today to overcome my addiction. Just doing the same things, like just reading the same thing over and over. It's like it became a part of me. It wasn't just words on paper. It was like a new lifestyle for me. It was like a new way of life for me. So it helped me a lot with my recovery.
Mhm. And was there a problem with drugs in the prison of Fluvanna? I hear about that at
Yes.
stuff.
Yes, Fluvanna is overwhelming with drugs. They have all types of drugs in Fluvanna, especially Suboxone. From what I understand now, Suboxone is going for like $200 a strip.
So did that make it harder for you to overcome your drug problem?
It didn't make it harder for me because I wasn't around those kind of people that was getting high. You know, it didn't even tempt me. Like today, I don't be around people that get high. I don't be around people that drink and drug. I don't be around people that commit crimes.
Um, so you got your GED at Fluvanna and you,
No, I got my GED in Goochland.
oh, at Richland, okay. But you got one of the scholarships you mentioned when you were,
Yes.
yeah. And so what did you do with the scholarship and what kind of educational program did you take advantage of?
Where I got my associate degree from Piedmont, Virginia Community College. And then after that, Darden, UVA, Darden School of Business, the Fairchilds, Mr. and Mrs. Fairchild, they began to bring business classes to the prison, entrepreneurship. So I got involved in that. And I ended up getting my 3 certifications in that. And I did the building maintenance class. I did the HVAC class. I did the printing class. I came home with like about 4 vocational trades, the 3 certifications from Darden School of Business, and my associate degree. So I came home prepared to work. I came home prepared to get a good job. I prepared myself for my reentry. But to my sadness, when I came home, it wasn't that easy for me to get a good job. It wasn't easy for me to obtain the type of job that I was expecting to obtain, you know, because even though they've taken that question off the applications, have you ever been convicted of a felony? Then they say list all the places you have lived within the last 10 years. So mine were Fluvanna Correctional Center for Women. So I was having a hard time finding a job. So I decided I'm gonna go back to school. I'm gonna go get my bachelor's degree. So I went to Howard University and I applied. I always admired Howard because when I was a kid, I used to sit on the wall of Howard and watch Debbie Allen and Felicia Rashad come in and out. Donald Byrd and the Blackbirds come in and out of Howard, and I always wanted to like meet them and be around people like that. So because when I grew up, we didn't have heroes like them. Our heroes were the number runners, the drug dealers, the bootleggers, the gamblers, the people that dressed up in fancy clothes, had nice cars, and was always smiling and talking loud. Those were my heroes. Those were the people I wanted to be like. And my father was one of those people. My father, he was like a gangster. He was like a gangster, and his name meant a lot. If you said you was Virginia Rudy's kid or Virginia Rudy's anything, people they looked up to you. They respected you. So, when I started, after my father got killed, and I started looking at other black people for role models, it always ended up at Howard University. So I said, I'm gonna go to Howard. So my GPA average was really good. My GPA average was 3.8, something like that. So Howard, they accepted me. So I had been to Howard about 4 semesters. So I noticed that the bathrooms was unkept. I noticed that in Howard, sometime in the classrooms, there'd be candy paper from the day before, still on the floor. So the people wasn't keeping the classrooms or the bathrooms clean. So I said, well, I'm gonna apply for housekeeping, being that I'm over here all day anyway. So I went and applied for housekeeping. And about 6 weeks later, I get a letter from them stating that after carefully reviewing your application, we don't feel that you are a good fit at this time for this position due to your felony convictions. So that instantly made me mad. I'm like, you mean to tell me all this stuff I have accomplished that you telling me I'm not good enough to clean your bathrooms, to sweep your floors, to mop your floors? Come on. So I developed a resentment. Every day I went to Howard after that, I always found something wrong. Something wrong with the professor. The classroom just looked bad. I always had some type of thing that, was bugging me about Howard. So I realized that I was developing a resentment. So an addict can't have resentments because resentments can take us back out. So I said to myself, I need to get out of here. So I was telling my counselor about it. I was in Friends of Guest House.
Mhm.
That's where I went to when I was released in 2016 was Friends of Guest House. And I was telling my counselor about it. So she said, well, I graduated from Marymount. Why don't you try Marymount? So I had never heard of Marymount University. So I went over there and I applied. They accepted me. So I transferred. So May the 19th, of 2019, I got my bachelor's degree from Merrimack in social work.
Mhm. You mentioned the Friends of Guest House. Why don't you tell us a bit about what that is, who they are, and how they helped you?
Well, when it was time for me to be released, I really didn't want to come home because I had nowhere safe to go. Um, all the people I could have lived with, they were still like using drugs or drinking or committing crimes. So, and the people that wasn't doing it, they didn't want to have anything to do with me because that's how they remember me. Because that's how they remember me as a drug addict and as a thief, So they didn't want to have anything to do with me. So my case manager applied for me at Friends of Guest House. And by a miracle, I was accepted. And I say by a miracle because now I found out when I was at Friends of Guest House that you can't be there. They don't want you there. They don't accept people with violent crimes. And I had a couple violent crimes, but I was still accepted. So God has stepped in and did for me what I could not do for myself. Friends of Guest House has been like a canvas for me, a canvas that I reinvented myself. I painted different backgrounds and picture of myself at Friends of Guest House. They just encouraged me and supported me in everything that I wanted to do, and they still do. I'm still very much involved in Friends of Guest House. Miss Galloway, she's the director. I love her. This lady named Miss Mary, she's like an outreach worker. I love her. These are people that I would never have met had I not been to Friends of Guest House. And they have been like positive factors in my life.
Right. Yeah. Um, I have one more question I want to ask you about Fluvanna. I mean, you described some really helpful educational opportunities that were offered to you there. Um, what else can you tell us about what the conditions at Fluvanna were like when you were there?
The conditions, well, the living conditions was like, it was very clean. It was clean, but the staff there, they were like very hostile towards us. Most all the staff was very hostile towards us. They will write you up for a little bit of anything. And the staff really made Fluvanna hard. Most of the staff, like when I say staff, I don't mean the teachers, I don't mean the volunteers, I mean the deputies. They like have a chip on their shoulder towards us. Some of them have sex with women, you know, and if you like, most of the staff there are men staff, and if you don't like cater to them, then they'll give you a hard time. Especially the ones that's like sergeants, lieutenants, and captains. If you don't cater to them or like flirt with their ego, then they'll give you a hard time.
There's been some attention to issues at Fluvanna with
With what?
healthcare.
Oh yeah, that's terrible. I was diagnosed there. I had kept getting sick. I had kept passing out. So I finally was diagnosed there with hepatitis C. I didn't know I had it because at that time when I came to Fluvanna, they wasn't testing you for that. They was only testing you for HIV. And so the doctor told me that my liver was rapidly deteriorating. So I said, well, what can we do about it? What kind of treatment can I get? You say, well, there is a treatment for it, but that pill costs $1,000 a day, and they're not going to give it to you here. Department of Correction don't do the treatment. I say, so what are you saying, that I'm just going to die? There's a treatment, but I'm not worthy of it? Who can put a price on my life? So he said, he explained to me that it's not the medical department, it's DOC. So I wrote a letter to DOC. I wrote a letter to Obama. Obama was the president then. I wrote a letter to the Homeland Security because I was still a federal prisoner. I was a federal and state prisoner. I wrote the Homeland Security. I wrote our senators, and I told everybody about it. And everybody I wrote, they emailed the institution about my letter. They emailed the institution or the medical department about my letter. I was the first one that got the treatment at Fluvanna. So now I understand that everybody's getting the treatment. So I was very happy about that I made a difference. But the medical department is liking a lot. I mean, women just die up there. They don't have to die. Women lose their legs and stuff. They don't have to, because the medical department, they treat us like indifferent. They treat us like we're not worthy of the medical treatment.
So what would you say are the greatest obstacles you've faced since you left prison? Clearly, just the fact that you were incarcerated has been an obstacle. But can you talk about what's been the hardest thing to overcome, and what's been the hardest adjustments that you've had to make?
Well, the hardest thing for me to overcome was, I would say, living conditions in employment. Living conditions, because they check your background for apartments. And I live in an apartment building now, but I live in it's like a project. It's from the housing authorities. And it's not very good, because I have mold in my apartment, and I had bronchitis for 14 months because of the mold in my apartment. It wouldn't let me heal. And I asked for a transfer out of my apartment to a newer apartment that have better ventilations, but I haven't gotten any results from that yet. But I would say to find a job that paid livable wage, and to find somewhere to live that's safe and is affordable.
What kind of work are you doing now? And I know that you've started a nonprofit organization aimed at helping other women establish careers. Tell us about that.
I'm working on it now. She stands for Seeking Higher Employment. I want to connect the women that's coming out of Fluvanna or Goochland or wherever they're coming out of, that have applied themselves, because in prison you can do your time, either you can do your time with education and self-help programs, or you could do your time with deviant behavior, which everybody expect. That's what you do in prison, is deviance. And deviance is like getting high, making hooch, just being very, very destructive. So the women that chose to prepare themselves for their release, as I have done, with education and self-help groups, then I want to be able to connect them to companies and corporations that would give them a career opportunity, not just a job. Like the women that has taken the prison class. I want to be able to connect them to a company that would give them a livable wage. The women that have taken the Braille classes, and got the Braille certification. When you take Braille and you get certified in in Fluvanna, then you're certified in the Library of Congress. So, when you do your cosmetology in Fluvanna and you get certified, you get your license are for the whole state of Virginia. So Fluvanna, they have some great educational opportunities.
Mhm.
So what she wants to do is connect the women that has taken advantage of those opportunities with companies or corporations that would give them a career opportunity. So right now I'm having a hard time with that because I'm having a hard time finding office space. So, and I need to fill out some grants. I'm having a hard time with that also, finding grants, but it's going to come together.
Yeah, well, I just have one more question. And that is whether you have any advice for activists on the outside who want to improve the criminal justice system.
Yes, the criminal justice system within itself, it needs an enema. Because for one thing, as we know, there's two different kinds of justice. There's justice for the people that have money, and there's justice for the people who don't have money. And the people who don't have money, they get time. The people that have money, they go home under house arrest. But the people that don't have money, they go to prison or they go to jail. So that's the main thing that's wrong with the criminal justice system. And when you're talking about reform, the prisons, they need to have more people working there that have compassion and concerns for the women and the men, not just some people that took the job because they needed a job and they're mad because they got to work there because they're the second inmate because they're locked up for those hours they working just like we are, and a lot of them are angry about that. They can't smoke on the grounds anymore. They have to go outside the grounds to smoke a cigarette. So, and I understand that they don't get paid very much. They get paid less than $20 an hour. So, they have resentments for their job. The COs do.
Mhm. Well, I really appreciate you taking the time to tell us about your experience. And I'll let Rabbi Feinberg have an opportunity to ask anything
Yeah,
else.
maybe just I have one. You mentioned how Havana was awash in drugs, illegal drugs.
Yes.
So, in your opinion, how did the drugs? How did that happen? How did these drugs get into the prison?
Well, I talked to a woman that was involved in selling the drugs, and she told me herself that she has over $30,000 in her account that she made from selling drugs. So what they do is they pay deputies. They pay the deputies to bring in.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
So
yeah, that was my suspicion, but I wanted to confirm it.
yeah,
That's why I asked the question the way I asked it.
yeah. And some of the women up there are ODing. A couple of them have died.
Yeah.
From Suboxone overdose.
Yeah. Well, I really appreciate your forthrightness in this interview about your own personal history and your observations about the obstacles people leaving prison face. and also your observations about the nature of criminal justice here in the United States. So really appreciate that. And we will, I will post this online, and when it's online, I will send you the link so you can
Okay.
watch it as well. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. And I hope that we have other conversations with you.
Yes, me too.
Yeah, and I wish you much good fortune in the future.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Let's keep in touch, okay?
Okay, Miss Gardner.
Okay. I'm going to stop the recording.